Let's see, who all do we have?
Ron he says he's racing to get to the meeting, so he's on his way.
All right.
Hello.
Testing, Andrew here.
Hi, Andrew.
Hi, it's Rhea. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
2, 3, 4. Oh, there's Jonathan. 5. It looks like we have enough to start the meeting.
I think we do.
Great. Call the meeting to order at 6:02 p.m. Kate, can you call the roll?
Yes. Steve Carreau. Rhea Ordner.
Here.
Barb Hart.
Here.
Andrew Dwart.
Here.
Ron Mitchell. Danielle Kraus.
Here.
Steve Rowntree. All right. I did hear from Steve that he would be coming, and we heard from Ron that he is also en route. So hopefully they will jump on soon.
And Kate, I'm Steve Carreau. I just joined.
All right. Thanks, Steve.
And it looks like Steve Rowntree is on too now, Kate.
All right. Yep. Now I'm seeing him as well.
Great. So just missing Ron.
Just missing Ron, and I'll note when I see him if I happen to see him come up.
Okay. Great. Let's start with the consent agenda. Are there any questions or comments on the consent agenda?
None from me.
All right. Hearing none, can I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
Great. Kate, do we need to call a roll on the consent agenda? Yes, correct?
We can, in the past, we've just said all in favor, say aye, and then anyone opposed.
Okay, all in
I think
favor, say aye.
if Barb, it's Miranda, I'm offer one recommendation because it's virtual. It is hard to ensure everyone's been able to share. So that's why we do a roll call vote, just to make sure that the record reflects everyone's true vote. And that's something that came out of that virtual training 101 that Jennifer and I attended, that if you're going to do virtual, it makes sense to do roll call. So just sharing information learned.
Okay, then Kate, can you do a roll call?
I will. Steve Carreau.
Yeah.
Rhea Ortner.
Yes.
Barb Hart,
Yes?
Andrew Duarte,
Yes.
Ron Mitchell, Danielle Kraus,
Yes.
Steve Rowntree,
Yes.
Jonathan Baumhover.
Yes.
Thank you.
Great. And do we have any public comment on non-agenda items? Okay. I'm not hearing or seeing any, so we will move on to the next agenda item. And on that one, Miranda, we don't need a roll call.
No, well, unless so these are all just discussions, right?
Yeah.
Am I correct? Or this is an action?
This is if there's any public
Information.
comment.
Oh,
Yeah,
no, yeah, no, you're good.
perfect. Great. The next item on the agenda is informational item Netherland Green Business Program, and I believe Garrett is here, and is Matthew here as well?
Yes, I'm here.
Can you hear me?
Excellent.
Cool. Well, thank you for having us. My name's Garrett McDaniel. I'm the sustainability coordinator for the town, and Matt Hannon is works for Boulder County. He's an advisor for the PACE program, and we're here to talk to you about the Green Business Program. So on behalf of the Sustainability Advisory Board, I'm seeking your partnership and approval in the launching of the Netherland Green Business Program. So what this is we provide assistance in supporting Netherland businesses to become more sustainable through energy efficiency and reducing waste. So, you know, Matt, that's part of his role with Boulder County, is providing that technical assistance, helping businesses, whether it's identifying rebates and other incentives, but connecting businesses to resources. The green business would also provide recognition for the businesses that partake in the green business program. So really, we're looking for approval and your support of this idea, and then we would take it to the Board of Trustees. The plan would be to open the application period at the start of the new year. It's an ongoing application period lasting for 6 months. Businesses can begin their application, and if they want to make improvements like adding LED light bulbs, they can do so. They would just need to have a completed application at the end of the 6-month period. As I said, myself and Matt would be available as resources helping businesses, you know, improve their energy efficiency. At the end of the application process, we would review the applications to determine the level of recognition, so it's either bronze, silver, and gold. So ultimately, we're trying to make businesses more green by increasing efficiency and reducing waste, while at the same time saving businesses money. What we're asking for you is your support and your partnership. You know, it'd be great to identify some members of the business community to act as primary stakeholders as I design this program. I certainly don't want to design a program that doesn't fit the Netherland business community. So with that being said, Matt, would you like to add anything?
No, I think that's great, Garrett. You know, there's this program, Green Business Program, started about 10 years ago in Lafayette, and it's kind of spread quite rapidly across this county, across the state, across the country. So it started Lafayette, but 5 years ago, Louisville hopped on, and then Superior and Erie and Longmont started programs. And so, you know, we'd love to see, you know, some of the mountain communities hop on. I think Durango has one, Summit County, Eagle County has one, and Netherland would be a great candidate. You know, I know a lot of the, you know, a few of the individuals on this call and some of the great things they've been doing with their businesses, as well as, you know, a number of the other businesses in Netherland that could really get recognized for their efforts. And it's a really simple process. You know, we keep it as painless as possible for the business and everyone involved. And it's just kind of a great community builder and brings some really positive PR to businesses in the town. So yeah, with that, I'm happy to answer, any questions, but not sure if Garrett had anything else to add to that though.
No. So yeah, any questions that you all have?
Yeah, this is Steve Carell. I had a few questions about it. One was I was wondering what the part about reducing waste, how you see that taking place. Like what would be the assistance or how would you achieve that?
Yeah, good question. So the program is really meant to, recognize businesses for the great things they're doing, but then above and beyond that, it's to alert businesses as to what else they could be doing to kind of step up their sustainability game, if you will, and try to reach that next level of recognition. So, Steve, I know I've been to your building a couple times, and you're very sustainable. But that's something that I haven't been there in maybe 2 or 3 years, and so if you let's say one of the businesses in your building, or you were to apply for the program, you get a certain level of recognition, a bronze, silver, gold. And then once you fill out this online application, it's got a whole waste section asking, do you have recycling? Do you have compost? Do you have bins accessible for employees? All kinds of questions revolving waste, for example. And then depending on what you answer, it kind of prompts you to think, oh, well, I didn't even think of that. That's something that I could be doing that I didn't think of. And if I start doing it, I'll get these extra points on my application. So I know you've already got a pretty good zero waste setup and circular economy setup, as we kind of call it now, up there. But I think there's certainly, some room for improvement, whether it's, getting a zero waste training for everyone that works in the building, or, providing you with some extra compost bags or whatever it may be. So there's multiple facets of the program that can really help in the waste, the energy, the water, any of those sustainability measures.
Oh, great. Thanks. That helps answer that a lot. One other I had actually questions, but one of them was how is this different from I've forgotten the name that you had told me about a few years back, but it was like the PACE Award program that we never did fill out the application for that, but I think it was slightly different from what this is now.
Yeah, that might have been our PACE certification. So
Yeah,
you'd certify businesses, and that was performance based. So, for waste, for example, you had to have an 85% diversion rate. And that actually factored in to this green business program. So if you reach that PACE certification, you get extra points on this green business application, which really kind of bump you up into those, bronze, silver, gold tiers. PACE actually did away last year with those certifications. We're actually taking a different approach now, called pathways. And so we're working with businesses to really kind of set some 2025 goals for themselves in terms of sustainability, greenhouse gas reductions, zero waste. And so we've kind of done away with the certification side and are replacing it with these pathways, which we planned on launching kind of during, right at the beginning of the pandemic, and a number of things kind of unfortunately pushed that to the side. But it's something that City of Boulder advisors have been really concentrating on this year, and we're hoping to launch a little bit more in 2022 for those businesses outside of the City of Boulder, but still in Boulder County. So it's a great question, but it is a little bit different. But traditionally, you get extra points on that green business application if you were PACE certified in any of those focus areas.
Okay, thank you. And then my last question is for either of you, but maybe a little bit more for Garrett, because you'd mentioned partnership with the DDA, I think in your intro. And I was just wondering, what that looks like, or what your thoughts were about that.
Yeah, really. I'm building this application, and I would like to be able to run that by somebody to say, hey, here's what I'm thinking to get folks just in the door to the green business program. Like, do you think these things are achievable for businesses? Are businesses already doing this? Because we certainly don't want to make a program that discourages businesses. I mean, especially for the first year, we really just want to get them in the door. And even if they're not doing things 100% correct, maybe they're only, we want to get them in the door. That way we can help them. We can see sort of that baseline. This is what they're doing. And so really, I'm just looking for some members of the community to run thoughts by, but also communication and outreach, using your channels to communicate and get the word out to folks at the beginning of next year. So those two areas.
Okay, great. Thanks for that clarification. I mean, my only comment is that it sounds great to me. I think it's a really good goal that ties in with the town's, kind of their future goals of along these lines. So yeah, personally, I'm in favor of it. But thank you.
I have a question, Danielle Kraus. I'm curious if you guys will include light pollution in your plans.
That's not something that we've really looked at too much. I know there's a dark sky ordinance in a couple of cities and towns throughout Boulder County, but the application, and I'm happy to, if anyone's got questions specifically about the application, I'm happy to chat offline and give you, a fake username and you can explore. But the application is basically set in these energy, waste, water, transportation, and then social and economic categories. And there's yes, no, NA questions. But at the bottom of each page, there's a write-in area where if you really feel like you're doing something above and beyond and are saying reducing light pollution as best you can actually type that in to the space on one of the pages and save it, and then you get kind of custom points on the application for that. But that's actually not really something I think has been taken into account though for the general applications.
All right, I just felt like it might be something worth encouraging, but I understand your point there. Thank you.
Yeah, certainly. I think that's a great point too. I was talking to Garrett about this earlier today, and there's such a thin line of trying to figure out kind of that gray area of what's too many questions to ask and too few questions. And the application, depending on the sector you're in, you get different checklists, which means questions, and there's anywhere from like 80 to 120 per application. So I think they probably factored in dark skies and lighting, but there's already so many lighting questions revolving on LEDs and exterior lighting and this and that. They might have just been kind of axed from the initial cut a few years ago for the developers, but that's something I'll certainly bring up to them because I think it's a great point.
All right, thank you.
Matt, is that something that we could add if we wanted to?
Yeah, I think that's something you can certainly add in there. I just because I haven't seen it on an application previously doesn't mean that you can't put a question or a prompt in there saying, or a measure is I guess what it's called, saying, do I factor in, light pollution, dark skies, when factoring in my lighting in my building or my business. I think that's certainly something you can add in there.
Okay.
Great, thank you. Can I ask a quick question, Matt? It's nice to see you online. How often do you, when you go through the certification program and once you're certified, how often do you do things like go back through and test the water faucets and things? Of course, we've done that through the PACE program. I guess it was about 5 years ago at the shopping center. So should we be doing it again? Is there a time frame?
Yeah, so traditionally, when a business would apply to the program, whatever town or municipality or city they were in, one of the requirements, actually, in the core measures, as we call it, is to have an assessment conducted by either a utility representative or a county representative, aka me. And so that's something that if we had 5 businesses in Netherland apply to the program, let's say, or 10 of them, I'd go up and I'd just do a quick walkthrough, just to confirm the application. There's a lot of technical questions on there, not just around do I have LEDs, but do I have a high efficiency AC unit? Do I have kind of technical questions about window film or weather stripping, that kind of thing that a lot of folks maybe don't know the answer to. So that's part of the walkthrough. Is I'll come up, do a little 15-minute walkthrough, 30 minutes depending on the building size, and just if you have any questions, are my faucets high efficiency? What kind of toilets do I have? That's something I would point out and help ideally on the spot, but then something that if you wanted to go back and I pointed out, oh, you could certainly use a new toilet. This one's really old. And that's something you could have, a few weeks to go and replace if you wanted to get those extra, water conservation points on the application. So that the assessment does tie into the entire process.
Great, thank you. Does anyone else have any questions for Matt or Garrett?
I got 2 quick questions. One, I guess I'm not seeing too much of a, beyond just agreeing to this as the DDA as a political board, what would be the DDA's commitment financially or bandwidth wise, either as board members or as DDA staff?
Yeah, so there's
Uh,
not real. I know Garrett could probably chime in, but I'll just say real quick that the state of Colorado, CDPHE, Colorado Department of Public Health and the Environment, pays for the whole Green Biz Tracker system. So that whole thing is no cost. And then it's kind of up to the towns or cities, municipalities to decide where they want to spend any money they might have for this program. Garrett and I discussed a little bit about the county sustainability funds kicking in a little bit, but really you're talking about paying for door decal stickers to stick on doors that say this this is a green business. Little things like that, or an event maybe at the end of the year, a few $100s for food, or to rent a space. But besides that, traditionally it's not a very costly program by any means.
Sweet. That basically answers that question. And then I guess my second question is, it seems like sustainability a lot of the time gets caught up in, REX credits, weather stripping, energy efficiency, HE. Is there the potential to incorporate economic sustainability into the measures if we were to support this, i.e., using local vendors and creating duplicity within the cash influx and inflow into your town? I think part of being a business owner in town is supporting the other business owners in town, whether that's through your services, your product, or helping to support them through your connections. And then I don't see anything currently in this or the measures proposed that recognize that element of community sustainability and economic sustainability as a small mountain town where it's exceptionally hard to run a business.
Yeah, great question. So actually, these were traditionally green business programs, they were called, and then Longmont came along, and the sustainability coordinator there, Berenice, she looked at it and was just like, oh, this is all environmental stuff. What about the social aspect? What about the economic aspect? So she really made us think, oh yeah, we've got to start thinking about that stuff. So about 2 years ago, we added an entire list of social indicators and economic indicators. So social indicators would be, diversity questions, breastfeeding options at the workplace, things along those lines. And then the economic would be, do you purchase, locally? Do you provide, charitable giving campaigns? Do you support those kind of things within your community? So there is actually about 15 of each social and economic questions that specifically, focus on those, and not just, do you have an energy efficient lights? Do you recycle? So that's been something we've certainly been incorporating the last couple of years into the program.
Sweet. So glad to hear. Thank you for answering those.
And does anyone else have any other questions for Garrett and Matt?
No, I just wanted to, thank Matt and Garrett as well, even though I haven't met Garrett personally, for all the work they've done for businesses up here. And I can tell you, we're working with a entity like Excel and having to do really detailed engineering worksheets versus something that's a bit more simple has been really helpful. And I just would like to see things kind of keep in that direction where a business doesn't need to hire a mechanical engineer to spend 20 to 30 hours filling out a worksheet to get take advantage of a rebate that is not offset by what they have to spend on filling out the application. So but that so far hasn't been the case. And thank you, Matt, and thank you, Garrett.
Yeah, thank you, and I'll see you and Barb on Friday afternoon, dropping off some bike racks and recycling bins.
Yes, we are very excited.
Yeah.
Does anyone else have a comment or question? Nope. Do we have any public comment? I think this is just really informational, so, and I don't see anyone. There's a few public, I guess, on. Great. Hearing no other comments, let's move on to the next informational item, which is Ned Gravel, and Gavin Coombs is here to talk to us this evening.
Yeah, hi everyone. Thanks for having me here. I wanted to just take a little bit of time, and really I was honestly just kind of looking for some feedback. As you know, I'll just fill in if you're not super familiar with what we put on this summer. This previous summer, on July 31st, we hosted the first Ned Gravel bike race. It was started here in town in Chipeta Park, started and finished there, and we had our post-race activities there as well. By all of our accounts, it was a big success. We sold out the race. There was a kind of a threat of severe weather the day of the race, which was unfortunate. So we didn't quite get all 700 participants up here, but it ended up being a beautiful day, and we had a great time doing it. We also brought in a lot of spectators and family members of the participants. We estimate somewhere between like 400 to 500 plus spectators were in attendance, spending the day in town. So, roughly 1,000 people, in addition to the typical kind of busy day that middle of the summer is in town anyways. And so really, I just wanted to kind of get some feedback. I wanted to wanted to just if there was any negative comments, positive comments, just wanted to hear kind of if from local businesses how you interpreted the event as a whole, and see how going forward we're just beginning our 2022 planning with some changes that hopefully will sort of streamline the whole day. It was a little crazy towards the end of the races with traffic and the bike racers finishing kind of through town and the roundabout. And so we're looking into making some changes that'll hopefully streamline that whole process. And but I guess before I go into kind of what we might be looking at for 2022, I'd love to, if anyone has any questions or comments or anything like that, I'd love to hear them.
Great, thanks, Gavin. I wasn't in town that day, but my husband was and said things didn't really seem to be backed up or be a problem at the shopping center. And since we're one of the closest properties to where you were, I just want to say from a business perspective for us, well done. It didn't impact us nearly as much as we thought it would. And other than a few people grumbling about traffic, which is common every weekend in Netherland, I think it was very well put together.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for your support and letting us be able to use part of the parking lot early in the morning to kind of help stage some of our racers. So we really appreciate that support for sure. Yeah.
Thank you. And does anyone else on the board have a question or a comment for Gavin?
This is Steve Carell. I just wanted to say that I didn't take part in that race and really witness it much, but hearing about it and reading about it in the Mountaineer, it sounded like a really great event, and well done to sell out, the first time you're doing it in an area. And I feel like, it sounded like a really big event from, I think it was like 700 racers or something. So, sounds like it would be a good thing for town, and glad that you're kind of approaching it from the point of view of how can we streamline this and, not cause problems, but actually help businesses in town through these types of events. So thank you for organizing that so well.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
Hey, this is Steve Rowntree. I helped out a bit on the Eldora side with the event from the parking standpoint up at Eldora, and I feel like it was really a positive event for town. Wasn't in town a whole lot during the day because of being up at the mountain, but overall, I feel like the feedback that I've heard is that it was a really well-run event, which I think can be really hard for a first-time event to pull off. Everything that I witnessed, you guys really were, I think, thoughtful and prepared to put on a really quality event and not create chaos, which can happen with first time events. So I say well done from what I saw, and I know other folks up at Eldora, we were excited to be able to help in the way that we could for that event. And I think it's a real positive type event to have happening in Netherland. So well done.
Great. Yeah, thank you. We again really appreciate Eldora's support. We wouldn't have been able to host an event like this without Eldora's support and being able to park the cars up there. And you guys had a long day starting very early in the morning, and so we really appreciate that support.
Great, thank you. Does anyone else have a comment or a question for Gavin? Hearing none. Thank you, Gavin, for being here and sharing your information with us. And we look forward to hearing what you have going on next year when you guys have it all figured out.
Yeah, and I'd love to share, whether another minute or two now or at another time, whenever, some ideas that we have for trying to work with some of the businesses in the downtown kind of area, to kind of create more of a kind of like just a fun atmosphere for the whole day. But I can share some ideas now, or I can share those at another time.
I'm okay with you sharing them now. Is anyone else? I think it's fine.
Okay. And I'll be brief, but so one of the big feedbacks we kind of heard from town officially was that the trying to move the event out of Chipeta Park, which is a great venue for this, but it does complicate things with traffic flow and congestion with the racers trying to finish through town and across the bridge and make that left-hand turn to finish back into Chipeta. So right now we're looking at moving the start and finish and like our expo, the post-race event, to Guercio Field and having it down there, and where you'd also have the start and finish down there as well. And obviously these are all, all of these are definitely just ideas and plans that we're working through. I mean, none of this has been submitted for permitting yet or anything like that. So, we're still working through all of that stuff. But I would love, my big vision for this is that we can get the whole town really involved. I mean, in terms of a spectator, event. And we heard that there were a lot of locals out, just outside their houses and their driveways cheering on the riders. And we heard a lot of really positive feedback from that. But also being able to incorporate the local businesses more. I mean, obviously the summer is already a busy time, but wanting to just continue to build on that. And so, I would just love to, I mean, first of all, would love to hear if there's anyone opposed to the races. Right now we're tentatively bringing the racers from East Street by Guercio Field up either 3rd Street or 2nd Street to the roundabout and heading north out of town on the peak to peak. And that would be early in the morning, but wanting to just think about ideas of, even the possibility of closing down like 1st Street and the first block of 1st Street and having like more of like a festival, putting on a stage and a music, like having a band playing during the day, and having things like that we can really hopefully build a sense of community and get more than just the participants involved. We want this to be a benefit for the whole town and not just a headache, for traffic or whatever. So we're just really kind of exploring ideas about how to get more businesses involved and just excited about the event and, just wanting to be, just have a participatory role in just the fun activities that we want to be able to put on. And so, I can leave that there. That's sort of, really just in a very briefly kind of the ideas that we're working through and still kind of refining what that may all look like. But kind of wanted to just throw that out there, knowing that, pretty much everyone here is a local business owner in the downtown core or a part of the town, and wanting to just let you guys know that's a little bit what we're thinking, and would love to just kind of hear feedback and, try to get as many businesses involved as possible.
Gavin, this is Steve Carell again, and I just wanted to mention that Teens Inc. Puts on the Ned race, as I'm sure you're aware. And one of their ideas I think was pretty cool is like having a bag or something that the contestants receive, and then businesses could put in little coupons for their business, or they could have them certain dates that kind of engages the businesses more and brings some more business to them. I just thought that was a kind of a cool angle, and very typical for a race setting. So I just wanted to pass that along because they were doing that type of thing, or talking about it at least.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's another thing that we would love to do. And I will say, unfortunately, we're a small operation. 90% of the work and organization came from me and a small team of people that we had around me. But unfortunately, I didn't get out to the local businesses as early as I wanted to, and we were a little late on that. But we definitely are going to be doing that for next year because that's just a great way, basically free advertising, for all the participants and for the businesses that want to be involved with that. But that's a great idea.
That sounds great. And Ned has done that for many, many years. I think this year was the first year. Maybe I didn't see them doing goodie bags, but I helped stuff many of those and received a lot of business out of them from coupons we put in them. So I know they work. Does anyone else have any questions or comments? Otherwise, I think we will say thank you very much, Gavin, and we will move on to our next informational item, which is a budget update with Kate. So thank you very much.
Thanks.
All right. So I just wanted to give everyone an update on the budget process. The budget meetings with the Board of Trustees have begun. Prior to our first meeting with the Board of Trustees, two numbers were adjusted to keep costs flat. And so I wanted to let everybody know that. The rent, we had $1,500 listed, which was a pre-COVID number. And in 2020, we actually had $600 listed, and we chose to kind of keep funds flat for next year. And so in our budget meeting with town, so $600 is what was submitted to Board of Trustees for the first budget meeting. And loan interest was the other area where we had a number from previous years that I think what we kind of decided had happened was there was perhaps money budgeted for a larger project, and you thought that there was going to be loan interest that was different. And so the loan number was $22,898. After going through some due diligence with town and myself, we believe the number for 2021 should be $350 because it should be $50 per project. That's the way the water loan fund works. So that's why that number was adjusted to there. And another thing that Rita and I had discussed, that when you guys saw the packet, it was kind of lumped together, but I just wanted to clarify this point because of what went before the Board of Trustees. And the funding for the website updates, where we have a little remaining funds, is under a project budget for next year, not a line item of the operating budget, which was just a point of clarification. So the next budget meeting with the Board of Trustees is October 19th at 7 p.m. Does anybody have any questions?
I don't have any questions. Thank you for that nice catch on the loan interest. That's wonderful.
Yeah, and thanks, Kate, overall for just putting in the effort, getting it off the ground and being new to the organization, but putting in all that effort to dig down and, make the budget process really pretty smooth this year.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Any other comments or questions before we move on? Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Hearing none, let's do the open board position.
All right. So sorry, I'm trying to take notes as I'm doing this, so just 1 second as I drop my note real fast. Sorry. All right. So as I sent out to the group and notified you when we received her resignation, Karina Lucier has had to resign her board position, and her resignation letter is included in your packet. The board position was posted on September 29th and will remain open until October 20th. The position has been posted on all social media and web for both town and the NDDA. The posting has reached over 350 members of the community and received 5 clicks just on the DDA Facebook alone. 1 application was received as of Friday, October 8th. It is our hope that the applicants will come to our November meeting and a vote will occur at that time. And just since this packet's been written, we've also, been having, I know Barb, she'll jump in now. She's been talking to people, and we've been making sure that we are getting out the word about this position, especially since we just did our annual election, and so hoping to make sure that we're drumming up interest and seeing if there's new people in businesses that are interested. So Barb, if you want to jump in on any of that.
Yeah, I've been out talking to different business members in the community, both at the shopping center and the other side of town, and trying to figure out who might be new and just trying to kind of tell people what we do as a DDA, because I think there's some confusion or just not enough information out there to understand what the DDA does. So I've been working on that. Because the deadline is a week from today, it would be very helpful if anyone else on the board would also be out talking to other businesses, saying, hey, have you ever thought about being on the DDA? Here's a little bit about what we do, and here's some information, which is all on the website, how often we meet, that kind of stuff. It would just be really helpful to make sure that we get, a couple of applicants in and see if there are other businesses that want to be involved as well. That's about what I have on that. Does anyone have any questions or comments on the open board position or Karina's resignation? She resigned the day after the last meeting. Just knowing that her time is she just doesn't have time for it. So.
Barb, Andrew here. I don't have any questions. I will say I have reached out to some business owners who have offices in Ned who I think would be good candidates, and have not heard back one way or the other. But I am really trying to dig deep here for good applicants, and just wanted you to know that I'm reaching out and giving it a shot, and just, you're not alone.
Great, thank you, Andrew. And if anyone has any question or wants to sit down and chat DDA, I'd be happy to do that. I would imagine Kate would be, and pretty much anybody on the board. It's something that we could all be sharing. And if there's anyone that you've reached out to that you think a second reach out would help, I would be happy to do that too. Send me their information. All right, if there are no other questions or comments, we can go to the chair report. It's in the packet. I have met with quite a few board members this month. And some of you know because you're on the meetings, but I attend most of the BOT meetings. At pretty much anything I can be at, I'm at least listening to if I'm not participating in, trying to keep informed on what's going on the BOT as well. We did get the 4th of July surveys up. We had 99 responses, which I thought was absolutely wonderful. And the 4th of July survey information is all in the packet. We have sent that out to every DDA business in the district. And the last time it was sent out by Kate, we basically had 9 more responses than we had before. So I do feel like we have good participation in it. I don't know that we want to do anything with that this month, but please look at the information and maybe we can talk about it more in November. And yeah, other than that, I said I've already spoken to others about the opening on the board. That's pretty much what my time has consisted of. I did get bank signatures taken care of and other things that were requested this month, and everything has been done at this time. To hear.
Thanks, Barb.
Yeah, of course. And then you have a treasurer's report. Ron, do you want to share that information? It's all pretty much right there.
It is all right there. So I don't think, unless anyone has any questions, I need comment any further.
Okay. I don't have any questions at all. If no one else does, let's move into the executive director report.
Hi, everyone. And like Barb said, most of mine is in my report there, but we've just been moving projects forward, working on the budget, and promoting our open board positions. And that's been an exciting opportunity to increase my engagement with the district and our community. So that's been a pretty exciting thing about the month for me. And in October, we'll also continue to work with town on the budget, as well as more work on our social media, our distribution list, and working on the website. So that's all for me. If anybody has any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Great, thanks, Kate. Kate also figured out all of the payroll glitches we had and has finally, after all this time, received a paycheck. So that was an exciting thing that happened this month as well.
Yes, it's exciting organizationally. You guys all have a payroll system and everything set up. So it is. It's very just all your incorporation documents, everything is all in line and been updated and reactivated. And so it's great to have gotten all that accomplished.
Great,
Yeah,
thank you, Kate.
that is great.
Great, let's move forward into Miranda's town staff report.
Okay, so similar to what Karen did, she would highlight employees. I sent out a Thankful Thursday every, I mentioned this last time, but every week I sent out a Thankful Thursday. So this last month we celebrated JP Niehaus and Jennifer Feinlevin, who are 2 of our officers with Ned PD. Just generally our police department is awesome. So in here kind of describes their outstanding performance. So recommend you look that over. Specifically, Sergeant Feinlevin was highlighted by the Boulder County co-responders, and I included their memo in here. Always put in a COVID update. We're continuing to see kind of a high cases per day, a little bit of an increase there. Boulder County Public Health has confirmed that it is very likely we will continue the mask mandate at least through the holiday season. So in this packet, and I also emailed out a script that they put together, which really helps employees on how to advise customers and clients about the mask mandate. In some counties, they're seeing a challenging response from people who do not want to wear a mask. One thing I realized I don't have in this report is that we do still have masks at the office. We're giving out 300 per business for the first round. So if you haven't stopped by, I encourage you to do so. We are getting another order coming in hopefully in the next couple of weeks, and we'll give out more masks so you can have them for your employees and to give out to customers who may have forgot them. Myself and Attorney Madsen attended the Colorado Municipal League conference in September. We both attended a lot of really great sessions, but one that she went to was about virtual meetings, and she gives some takeaways on how kind of best practices to conduct virtual meetings. We, at the board meeting on October 5th, there was a brief discussion about parking. Basically, the Board of Trustees wants to revisit parking code and talked about some things like removing the parking requirement in the central business district for all businesses except for new businesses, ending the commercial parking fund, changing the calculation for how parking is counted. A lot of this comes at the heels of 2 variances that were approved for Kathmandu and BC Brews regarding parking. So right now, town staff, we're researching how other municipalities handle their parking, and we plan to offer some recommendations. And then we do anticipate either a joint session between the DDA and Board of Trustees, or just a discussion item before you to get your recommendations on how to handle parking. So would recommend you start to familiarize yourself with current code and come up with some thoughts on how to address code changes. And many of you know the town was interested in applying for a community revitalization grant that would allow us to do health and human services, medical and or affordable housing at the old town shop. We were not invited to apply initially because we're not shovel ready. So the board has asked that we scale back that project and get feedback on how the community feels we should approach developing a lot of our viable public parcels. And so I'm working on that public outreach strategy, and we'll likely bring that back before the DDA either in November or December. I attached a letter from Peak to Peak Health and Human Services. They were awarded the Healthy Communities Award, so big congratulations to them. I've outlined the Marshall recruitment strategy, so you can see kind of the timeline. We hope to be able to hire or offer a job to the town marshal in December so that they can overlap with Larry. Interviews would be the week of November 15th through the 18th, and we will have one section that's open to the public. Couple business updates. Decent Market LLC, which does business as Decent Bagel. They were approved for their liquor license, and they're going to operate out of 95 East First Street. So look to see them up and running here in a little bit. Kathmandu is back home, which I know is an exciting thing, I'm sure, especially for Andrew. They're back in their building. And we're seeing a lot of increase in food trucks. Historically, we've kind of only had a handful, like 2 or 3. We did just recently approve applications for the Dynamite Shack and Pork Hub. And there are a few more we've been talking to that are in the pipeline. And as always, I like to just conclude with a Public Works update. I am not the expert there, so if you have questions, reach out to Chris Pelletier. But that's staff report.
Great, thanks, Miranda. Does anyone have any questions or comments for Miranda?
No, Miranda, is your screen, are you, I guess I'm just looking at share screen. Are we still at the staff accolades, or have you scrolled down, or is my computer?
I didn't scroll. I wasn't scrolling as I was talking,
okay,
so I just kind of left it on this screen.
Okay. All right, that's all. I was just.
It's in the packet, though. If you want to
Yep.
read it over and if you have questions, let me know.
Great, thanks.
Thank you.
And Rhea, do you want to do the beautification committee update?
Well, there is something a little bit in, the packet, as you can see on the screen there. Just yesterday, Barb and I met with Hannah Macht with City Floral. She's been volunteering her time, for quite a few years now, just putting the planters together and making sure we have what we need. And she has a really keen eye. I think that the flowers could use some room for improvements, and they just, weren't really robust like I've seen in other mountain towns I go to all over Colorado at the similar elevations. And there's a couple things going on. One is that we're really trying to be as sustainable as possible growing these plants that basically die at the end of the year. We have invested a lot of money in this water wick system called the farm tub system, so we don't have to be watering every day. And perhaps that's one reason why our flowers aren't as robust in other areas. It's something we're researching. Another thought I had, or that we came up with, is maybe a lot of these towns actually have their flowers grown out below and plant them when they're larger. So that's something we're going to look at as well. Anyway, so we're working on it, and we're hoping to come back at the next meeting with some more defined action points for everyone to vote on or to discuss. And happy to hear everybody's comments. With Karina leaving, Barb's been filling in with me on the subcommittee a little bit, helping out. But and I know I did get a couple of letters of interest of people interested in being on beautification. So I'm not, Barb, I'm not sure if you still want to work on that with me as chair, or how that works. But I know you have a lot on your plate, so.
I'm definitely going to reach out to Central City and Blackhawk and find out a little bit about how they do their flowers, which are just gorgeous. And because I already have the contacts there, so I would think at the next meeting, if we can kind of discuss that further, I'll look at how my timing is going, because I think there are other people on the board that also have a lot of great knowledge to share. And I think it would be a good in-depth discussion for the November meeting.
Okay.
I just had a quick question. I'm curious if Rhea, yourself, or Barb might be aware. When was the last, we mostly use planters. When was the last time that soil was amended or changed out in our planters?
This past year, and the planters, they were all dug out and new potting soil was put in.
So are we just buying store-bought potting soil?
Yes, and the reason why, Jonathan, is because this water wick system really relies on a certain type of potting soil that the manufacturer of the farm tub system, these wool wicks, has recommended. And the year before this one, in 2020, the soil was amended with compost. And while normally in just like a traditional pot or a perennial garden bed, that's great, it actually ended up clogging up the wicks. And so they weren't functioning right. So that's why we went with this potting mix. And the farm tub, it's a husband and wife down in Boulder that developed this system. And it's really, really cool. So we kind of just went with, they actually came up and inspected our farm tub wicks and the planting platform and all this stuff, and helped us order some new parts and things like that. So
okay, yeah, I
we
was
have to
just
be
curious
careful about the soil.
because I did notice a lack of, this year it seemed like they just weren't doing as well as in the previous years, and I was curious about that. So I would have some interest in potentially jumping in come November when we have a little bit more time and information. Gardening is a side hobby passion of mine. Unfortunately, I'm excessively busy with
that would be great. Yep. No, that would be great, Jonathan. And I think, between now and the next meeting, as Barb said, she'd contact Central City. I'm going to try to contact some of these other mountain towns and see what I can find out and how it works for them.
Can you send an email to the DDA that has the information on that, the Boulder couple who've developed this WIC system? And I would kind of want to, I've read, I'm sure I actually probably know who they are because I've kind of tried to create a few of my own out of, reused material based upon their designs. And they actually do work really well. And I think there are ways we could talk with them to maybe get a little bit away from just, a store-bought potting mix, even if there's a recommended, with any potting mix. There's variation to every single potting mix and
No,
different.
I mean, I
batches
think I'm
different.
open to that. I mean, Andrew recommended doing that as well, and even came up with a scenario. But I think it takes somebody who has time, who's going to want to experiment with that. Like, I don't have the time in the middle of the summer, or
Yeah.
even in June, to experiment. Like, let's do this one pot and this thing. I just have, we just need to. That's going to be somebody's little side hobby, and I think that would be fine. So.
Yeah.
Pass that off to like the high school students as a senior project.
You could try, but the motivation level there of high school students and even college students as interns is getting less and less, it seems. But I just wanted to thank you all for your continued effort on this. And it might not have been all that great this year, but there was also, a pandemic and changeover in staff and management of the whole project. And I think overall, you still put in your best effort, and it was still nice to have flowers around town. So I just wanted to commend you all on your efforts.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, we're trying the best we can with the time we have, but hopefully we'll get this process streamlined one of these years, and it'll be awesome every year. So sorry it's taking a little longer to get there than everybody wants.
I'm curious if the community center would be open to experimenting with the watering system and some soils over the winter, if they have a space for maybe 3 smaller pots. I don't know how large the system is, but that might be an opportunity if none of the students are interested.
I mean, you could look into it, but like, how are those plants going to grow in the middle of the winter inside? I mean, you're going to set up big lights for them or something? I mean, I almost think it needs to happen during the growing season. But
And there's no heat.
The expectation too. Oh, go ahead.
Hope Jordan said that the community center garden up at the community center in the greenhouse was able to grow year round. So maybe if it's just with some of the plants that are already established doing well in the winter, it might give feedback on the soil acceptance for the water system.
So you'd want to talk to Chris Current about that. It's Miranda. I was just going to chime in that just from a community center personnel standpoint, we don't have the capacity to take that on, but the food pantry and their volunteers may be able to support.
I would jump in just kind of as a hobby gardener that specific plants that can grow year round up here are pretty much your Swiss chard, your kale, certain types of broccoli, basically cold weather crops, radishes. And yeah, you can grow them year round in a greenhouse setting, but it doesn't actually give much information when it comes to annual flowers. They have much different nutrient needs as well as different loam needs in the soil. And considering that this beautification is built kind of upon a wicking system that requires certain loam in the soil blend to actually wick the water through it, that information might not be too helpful in us finding a way to have better annual flowers. Flowers in particular have very specific needs, and they are vastly different than edible veggies, which is the food pantry's kind of focus in growing.
That makes sense. Thank you, Jonathan. Does anyone have any other questions or comments on beautification? Hearing none, let's go to Andrew for a Big Springs update, which is also in the packet.
Okay. Well, this has been somewhat of a circular process where basically the Town of Ned Public Works, Chris, and I'm gonna do my best to paraphrase Chris without speaking for him. But one thing is that we need to see Tebow begin doing work on his parking lot and also he's calling it an amendment of retaining wall design, which is fine. So Town of Ned has been working with JVA, and JVA has, as you can see, there's a bid set for review that's attached to this packet, and this still needs to be kind of kicked around, I think, one more time by Public Works. One of the things that seems like it's a chicken or the egg scenario is that Tebow would like to see Netherland release the drawings and have JVA put out a RFP. JVA and the town is of the mind that, well, we could do that, but we're still waiting on this final modular concrete retaining wall design, which may change the engineering of the town drawings and make, increase costs and make JVA do something twice. So, as far as these 5 bullet points, we have a bid set to review, which Chris and Ron and I need to sit down and go over after Chris returns. We've heard from Stephen Tebow that he is going to start doing some preliminary site work based on his original permit, which I can't speak to. Miranda, maybe you can confirm that there is still an original permit that has been extended that allows Tebow to start doing some site work, even if it's, getting machines and materials on site. And then when the town is given the amendment for a modular concrete retaining wall, which is the direction that Tebow wants to go, that will then be reviewed by Safe Built and potentially redlined, given back to Tebow's engineers to kind of finalize a permit set of drawings for not only the Black Forest grade increase, but also for the retaining wall. And then JVA could incorporate the final wall design with the Town of Nederland bid set. So at the end of the day, I believe Chris and town staff and Public Works, and as well as myself, just as a third party contractor, would say, hey, really it makes sense for just one person to do this work. And we would like to see Tebow Properties start doing the work. And if what that meant was, they felt that they needed to start doing what they were allowed under their current permit to do while they were waiting for the engineering to come back approved from Safe Built for these modular concrete panels. At the end of the day, what we're trying to avoid is, number one, putting out an RFP where no work has started at the Black Forest and there's not a permitted retaining wall assembly, because the retaining wall and the sidewalk come right next to one another. So the goal is that Tebow and the Black Forest, it's private property. He's able to put in plans and get an approved permit set that includes a modular concrete retaining wall that then would be sent to JVA, where JVA may say, okay, well, we need to tweak a couple of things, and then we're ready to put out the RFP. After talking to Nathan of JVA, his fear is, or not fear, his concern is that he would put out an RFP and then simultaneously or concurrently, Tebow's plans would be approved, and then because you've got the public sector and the private sector really trying to work together to pull something off, that JVA may be asked to go back to the drawing board, not completely, but to change some things and change some designs, because the elevations of the stairs and the sidewalk and the drainage and everything is very critical. So I know that probably sounds confusing and circular logic, but our goal was to be able to know that if you have one contractor doing the job, if that's the contractor that Tebow has retained to his parking lot and his concrete modular wall system, then it's in that contractor's interest and maybe competitive to also do the underground drainage work. Now, it's not just the lowest bidder that the town needs to select. I think what both Chris and myself and Ron have talked about is that we're trying to avoid we're trying to transparently avoid multiple contractors involved in what really should be one project that's partially public and partially private. So I know that's kind of a little bit wordy, and sorry if I got, but definitely please ask questions and let me do my best to answer them.
Great, thank you, Andrew. I don't have any questions myself because I feel like you've given us quite a bit of information, and it looks like after Chris Pelletier returns, perhaps we'll know more. So maybe we could have a little bit more of an update at the November meeting.
Mhm.
Does anyone else have any questions or comments for Andrew?
Just
This
like to
is
say,
Steve. Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I appreciate you continuing to work on this, and it kind of highlights some of the difficulties of engaging in public-private partnerships. But I just wanted to kind of throw kudos to continuing to try to work with both the town, the DDA board, as well as a private landowner to accomplish a much needed project, and kind of working through all of the complications that arise in such a project.
Thanks, Jonathan. And I think there was some confusion on both Tebow's part and town's part, as far as where a holdup was, so to speak, when really the holdup was not so much in any particular place. It was really just wanting to see the public and private sector work together in the most efficient way possible. And but thank you, Jonathan. I appreciate that. And I know that Tebow's team is on the same page, and we've had lengthy discussions with them. And I know that Chris has made clear his stance, and Nathan has also made clear of why he would prefer to wait to release things until he gets a final design set, because it's really hard to look at these as two separate projects because of how close and integrated they both are. So I think that's past us now, and people are working where they need to work, and putting their energy where they need to put it. And so that's the Big Springs parking update. But as far as timeline goes, I believe that my last indication from George, who's the project manager for Tebow, is that they expect the engineering for the modular wall system in the next several weeks, which would then still have to go to Safe Built for approval, review and approval. And during that time, JVA is making final adjustments to their RFP. So this and send it back out. And at that time, presumably Tebow would have a contractor doing some preliminary site work in the Black Forest parking lot, while the RFP that has incorporated the current engineered concrete wall drawings as well as the town's bid set goes out for RFP, and then contractors are selected. And I just want to remind everyone that it's this is not necessarily going to be about the lowest bid, and by no means am I pushing for any contractor or the other, and I have no stake in this. So that's all I have to say about that.
Great, thanks, Andrew. And Steve Carreau, did you have a question or comment?
No, I was really just going to say, thank you for all the hard work. And I know it is a lot of lot of additional work to try to coordinate the 3 different, groups or 4 or more. So yeah, it was really just thank you.
Great. Yeah, thank you, Andrew.
Absolutely. No, it's fun. It's kind of, it's just another day at the office.
If there are no other questions or comments, we can move forward, and I can hop through a couple of the committee reports real quick. The committee, we don't have a report this month. The communications committee, Kate has really kind of grabbed hold of the social media and the website. So we're doing that. She's sending in a director's report to the Mountaineer, which is also printed. It's really exciting. We're kind of getting word to the public directly from the board, which is a really nice way to do it. Performance space is sort of in limbo right now as other town entities work on the same issues. So we haven't done anything with that. And then public arts, and that will be Danielle.
Thank you. So the public art update, the mural is moved to Wild Bear, the Eco Arts Lounge. It's up on the wall. And I got a photo from Jill Dreves today that Greg has met. He has a key. He will be starting his work painting it, which is very eager for us to see the process. And I am getting Carrie Evans updated with a Facebook page so that she can help us be updated on the process. We can watch what's going on and be involved with the excitement. And we will also be working with Wild Bear in finding ways to announce it to the public and get them involved to watch it and come see it. We're also waiting for Merle, and that didn't come through, so we will be updating this letter, apologizing for our lack of communication with them and keeping them involved with future projects. We are kind of bummed out about that, but it is also a learning process. And Judy is also going to be getting involved with Barb. They'll be connecting via email so that we can be more communicative with the public and getting to know each other more and finding out what kind of projects town wants to see and what we can help get created. I think that's pretty much it without reading over all of it. The next meeting is the 28th of this month, not next month. So we will be moving along and getting further updates on what we're doing and planning. And as always, thank you for having NUD Public Art. It's a great thing. I know we're learning a lot, but it's also really exciting and always fun to learn it and help have art in town. And I am getting more feedback as I get back into town myself and be more social that people are looking forward to seeing more artwork here. So I'm happy to be involved with it. Thank you guys. Were there any questions or comments about it?
That's great, Danielle. Thank you. I'm excited to see Greg's work move forward and excited somebody will be sharing that with us on Facebook. Send us a link or send it to Kate and she can send it out to the whole board once they have that going so we can watch what's happening. That's very exciting news.
Excellent. Thank you.
Does anyone else have any questions or comments, or should we move forward to wayfinding with Steve Carreau?
All right. Not sure if there are any comments for Danielle. It looks like maybe not right now.
Yeah,
So
go for it.
Well, the Wayfinding Committee is myself and Barbara Hart and Claudia Schaffler, who left the board here several months back. And we're working with John Bozio at Merge. And I guess the sort of the update is that we have a survey that's live now, and we haven't gotten as many responses as we would all like. And so we've decided, Barbara and I decided to keep that open. Barbara, is that up through Halloween? Forgotten.
Yeah, we were looking at keeping it open until at least Halloween. The last communication we had from John was that we really haven't had that many, had enough responses. He had 29 as of yesterday. And we really want more community input than that. So hopefully after the meeting, we can have, maybe Kate will put together something saying, hey, this is what happened at the meeting. And we can say, and by the way, don't forget to check out this survey we have going on, and get the word out again, and then keep sharing it on social media and other ways to try to get the public to respond to it, because it is a big project and it's going to impact businesses as well as residents here. And the feedback we have is great, but it would just be really nice to hit, I don't know, 50 or 50 to 100 was the main goal that we were looking at. So just keep sharing it, keep getting the word out there, and have more people participate in that survey.
Yeah, so that was a big message for tonight, is really for all of our board members as much as possible to get the word out about the survey. And I put the link in here to help, if people want to share it by email or whatever. But we are really hoping for a much broader bunch of feedback, as Barb said, because it is a very big project for town. And I think that it'll be great to have more involvement from all parts of town, whether it be businesses or residents. And so that's a big thing for tonight, is really just to have everybody try to get the word out to others to take the survey and give us some feedback. So we're kind of waiting for that, and we hope we'll be able to bring this back in a more formal way with discussion items at at November's meeting. Another part is I feel like it would be really helpful for our Wayfinding Committee to know a bit more of the kind of the feeling and the goals and objectives of this board to help us guide the wayfinding forward. So please, reach out to us by email after the meeting and give us your feedback. One of the things that I thought, number 3 on my aim here, is what problems are we trying to solve with wayfinding, and which tools would be the most effective and urgent will help us with phasing. But really to think about what are the problems that we're trying to solve with wayfinding. And from listening, I've been on this committee since the beginning, and it's been probably a year and a half now since we first broached the subject. And kind of what I'm getting is that it would be, it's something that can be really helpful to the town for getting people to utilize our parking spaces, our public parking spaces more. I've heard that for a long time, that's a real objective of the wayfinding. And then as soon as they get out of their cars, it's a great goal if we get them to park, because if they park, they're probably going to end up spending money in town and enjoying the place and all that. So that's the first objective. But then from the time they park, how do we get them to the businesses where they can spend money and help them really facilitate that process, so that if they've stopped in town, how do we get them to various particular places that they're interested in within the town? And I've been hearing over the past many meetings here that it seems like a lot of the board is in favor of a digital approach, rather than having very involved static signs, non-digital, that would have to be updated pretty continuously at a bigger expense. If we went with a digital approach, we can tie it into a database that is managed. So I've been hearing that, but anyway, just to really ask the board to get back to Barbara and me, in particular, with your ideas about what you see the wayfinding project, how it can be most effective, and that will help us to work with merge. And just it goes on here, but one of the things how I've seen it is the vehicular signs I don't think need to be terribly abundant. Primarily I think that a lot of the vehicular signs should point people to potential parking spaces and parking lots. And then I could see, some static kiosks at the parking lot. So when people get out of their cars, they can see the gist of what's going on in town and a map and, where the main districts are. It's basically First Street and the BNF area for the most part. They can see those and visualize them, but then have a very prominent QR code or an easy way for them to access the app that then, it's so powerful. It can really get people to exactly the businesses that they're interested in. And so I see it as a really good way for the whole town to prosper from this, where, sales tax revenue will increase. We'll have far fewer infuriated travelers coming through town because they can find the parking spaces, and then they get out and explore the town. So really just hoping to hear some more from the board before our next meeting to help guide us with that. And then the other part of the puzzle is the phasing of, what is most urgent and what would make sense to be in the first phase. And, we're still developing this, obviously. So I think hearing your feedback will really help us. And I think that's really it. I wouldn't worry too much at this point about the financial considerations because we don't really have enough data yet and we don't have a phasing idea yet. So, as much as possible, just to go with the broad strokes that John gave us at the last meeting. But I think the more important thing will be just to think a little more theoretically about what it is we want to accomplish with wayfinding and what are the most important first steps for it that can help us create a phase 1 project. So anyway, that's my thoughts, and would love to hear more feedback from everyone, one-on-one by email or phone calls. But certainly if anybody has any input now or questions, Barbara and I would love to hear that, and we could try to clarify anything.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you, Steve. I think the biggest thing, take the survey, share the survey, because there's so much information in there that we're using for the next steps. And then hopefully we can come back next month with John on the meeting as well and have a more realistic goal of what we're looking at. From the survey so far, from the 29 responses, I can definitely say it leans very heavily towards digital. And other than parking signs telling people where they can park, it really does. Almost every survey filled out says we need to be able to get from point A to point B. And I know that's a strange concept in such a small town, but people that are not from here don't know that the rock shop is across town, or if they're at the rock shop, they don't know the music stores on the other side. And having that information at the touch of your fingertips, like any other community these days, is so important. And it would be great if everybody could just take the time to fill out that survey and share that survey online to get as much community feedback as we can.
And one more thing I wanted to add about the digital approach versus sign approach is John several times in various meetings over the past year has mentioned how there's different tools that we use, but they reinforce each other and they're all important. So, I've heard some people say like, just let's go all digital, and other people saying, maybe we don't want digital. But I really feel like a good wayfinding program would incorporate parts of both. So we'd have static signs in town that that reinforce what the app is telling people. So for example, if they're over at First Street and they want to find a music store, it'll send them across the bridge and down to the BNF, and perhaps right there at the BNF lot corner, where the train cars are, there could be a static sign that lists the businesses within the BNF. And someone who's walking that way and not quite sure they're on the right track or that the shop is in there would see that signboard. So I think it's important to think of them, the tools as reinforcing each other and working together. So that just wanted to add that bit.
Yeah, Steve, no, I agree. And I think, whether it's a minimal, static sign directing people to public parking where, for example, you pull up to a parking spot, let's say Town of Ned parking spot number 21, and there happens to be a QR code and you're able to download the app, which, is somewhat dynamic and refers people to businesses, historical sites, discounts, local happenings, etc., as well as lets people feel like they're not going to get towed, and maybe it's also hey, it's a 2-hour limit. So once you scan that code and you park in that spot, your 2 hours or however many hours have started, and enjoy your time, and then you have to find another spot. So maybe that would just kind of off the top of the head a way to integrate static fixed signage directing people to public parking, as well as how a QR code at that parking spot could be utilized to make sure no one stays there all day, as well as load them up on business directories, and also a time limit on parking.
Yeah, that's a cool idea to integrate that. I'm sure it could be done through an app.
I'll just jump in here real quick, and I appreciate you guys actually looking at a hybrid approach, and I agree, Steve, with the benefits of what you might be calling a static sign. I guess my only thought with a static sign would be to make that static sign a digital approach, like a programmable LED sign, so that what's displayed on it can remain static or be switched over for special events like the farmers market or the gravel race or the Buffalo Bill race or the Netherland. And I think one key element we might be missing in this whole wayfinding project is the communication amongst businesses themselves, particularly the bars at night and the music scene in Ned at night. That it would be very helpful for, there used to be, more so, it's kind of fallen apart during the pandemic, but a lot of communication between the local establishments and what music venues they had going on, what nights. And a lot of our local bartenders and waitressing staff and wait staff in general work at multiple of our different businesses and kind of hop around depending on the business owner's needs. And a huge part, I think, of wayfinding to benefit the business community would be having a open line of communication with those business owners and incorporating the ability to help them advertise through these quote unquote static signs. And I don't see that as possible unless those static signs have a digital element. And I know that Randy Lee, as far back as 10 years ago as a BOT member, was advocating for this sign, for the town to move toward programmable LED signs. And part of that comes from my thought of the comprehensive plan of do more with less. So if we're going to take the time as the DDA to invest funds and build signage, we should make sure that that signage has multiple uses, and it could, for the most part, be used for wayfinding to direct folks like this. But during nights when we don't have the hiking, biking, recreational community coming through town, but we have those who are either renting our legal SDRs or staying in our limited hotel space, we could then be using those signs through LED, programmable signs to direct them to the specific bar that is having the music venue, whether it's, maybe String Cheese or Elephant Revival. Those were the big ones back in the day. I'm sure there's new and upcoming bands I'm not aware of because I no longer work in the restaurants. But I would encourage you guys to think about making whatever static sign that you have the ability to be dynamic as well. And I see that through a programmable LED sign, similar to how Calvary Chapel replaced their, prayer, whatever of the week with a programmable LED so that it can be changed on a 12-hour basis or to highlight special events.
Yeah, thanks, Jonathan. And I think that'll come in more as we get deeper into it, as far as the cost reward ratios and also maintenance, how well these LED signs could remain functional in our climate. And I think for me, that's one of the bigger questions. And if it's proven that, the LED kind of technology now is good enough, and we see if there's cases of that being in a lot of ski towns and mountain areas similar to our climate, I would be all for that. My bigger concern is just whether they would break down with our harsh climates. But I get your points, and I think those are all really valid questions that we'll be, hashing out more as we get deeper into this. But thanks for that input.
Thank you for all your hard work.
Sure.
Does anyone else have a question or comment about wayfinding?
This is Rhea. So what's the process now? I know you said you wanted us to contact you outside the meeting with ideas, but what's our path forward?
Have you filled out the survey yet?
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, yes.
So if you've filled out the survey, perfect. If you have specific questions or comments, please email myself or Steve or Kate, and she can share it with both of us. And then we can kind of take that all into consideration before the next meeting, when we hope to bring John back with some different ideas. Right now, we're still waiting for more people to respond to the survey. So if you can share it with others and get them to respond, the more people, the better, just because it is such a big project. So that's the process we're in, is just gathering information so that we can come back with a lot more information next month.
Okay.
Thank you.
And I would assume in a future meeting, we can talk more about modular signs and LEDs, which I actually don't want to see in the town of Nederland personally.
Right,
But
right.
I don't need to get into this. I just don't think it fits our character, but we can leave that for another time. I think an app on the phone would be great, but not blinking lights over town. I think we have too many lights in town, and we don't meet dark sky standards as it is. So anyways, thanks.
Yeah, thank you, Rhea. And Barbara and I will, be working in between this meeting and next on the wayfinding. And, I think that we're planning to bring this back as a discussion item, with a few particular points to discuss. In addition to having John, give us the feedback from the survey and his analysis of it. But I think we just didn't have enough information to want to put it as a discussion item tonight. But I think so I'm hoping to just get some feedback to us in between this meeting and next, and then we'll have a little bit more focused discussion about it at the next meeting, I hope.
Exactly. Thank you so much, Steve. Thank you, Rhea.
Yeah, thank you.
If we don't have any other questions or comments on wayfinding, we can move into our discussion items. And Kate is going to present information about the working agreement with the Board of Trustees.
All right. So during our CD discussion item last month, it was requested that I make some outreach to our attorney, Paul Benedetti, around a working agreement and what that could look like. And after having a discussion with him last week, he believed that he could draft a working agreement around several areas of needed clarification that have been accepted in other communities, that he could put that together for the NDDA and Board of Trustees to review. And then a working session could then be convened to continue review and come together on a final draft. Mr. Benedetti stated that depending on how much back and forth, the amount for this work could be between $3,000 and $5,000. So, so I'm bringing that back to you all tonight, and I'm just wondering, does the board approve of potentially moving forward with proposing a draft working agreement? Does the board desire to have a working session with the Board of Trustees? Is there a desire to share the cost of coming up with this working agreement? So those are the kinds of things I'm looking for tonight from y'all.
Great, thanks, Kate. I think for this particular one, since this came up the last meeting as well, so I wonder if we should just go around the circle and have any comments anyone wants to make about it. I can start. I think it'd be great to have a working agreement with the Board of Trustees, kind of just outlining a lot of things that don't seem very clear to me as a DDA board member. And that's my thought on it. Since I don't know what it would cost to do it with anyone else, I have to assume that Mr. Benedetti is giving us a reasonable rate, and I would personally be okay with going forward with that, but let's go around the circle. Let's start with Steve Carreau.
Yes, thanks, Barbara. So I feel like it is a good thing for us to have a develop an agreement with the BOT, because whatever, almost 2 years or more on the board, it's been a constant for lack of a better word, a constant battle between the DDA and the BOT on several issues. And I think to hammer those out with the BOT and have them memorialized would be very helpful for the future of both of our boards. And it would minimize and help clarify a lot of the kind of perennial struggles that the two boards have with each other. So I'm really in favor of doing it. I do feel like it's something that would be good to share the cost equally with the BOT. Perhaps just out of principle, I think that it's something that will help both of us, and that we should share the cost of it. It sounds, relatively reasonable. I also don't have much of an idea of the cost for such a thing, but I think something in that price range seems pretty reasonable. And I've forgotten what the third question was. Let me go back to my side.
The working session was the
Yeah,
other question.
yeah. So, right. So I think the other part is, I think it makes sense if we do want to go forward this, to bring it up with the BOT and kind of get their buy-in and see about sharing the cost up front. And then I think it makes sense to have a draft of the agreement written, and then both boards could address what's in the draft, but that would help facilitate the working session very well, I think. And Kate or Barbara, I was wondering if you've identified yet, any particular items that you think should really be in the agreement.
So what Paul and I discussed were generally the items that we had questions on for the last meeting, was most of what we had talked about. But what I liked about the conversation with Paul is that there's kind of some commonality to what municipalities and DDAs, because of the vagueness of some of the statute, that there's common things that are getting worked out in other communities in Colorado. And so that's what I liked about our conversation, is that he saw those items, but he had some other ideas too that he would put in there, so that everyone could see if it was something that needed to be or if it's not. So it would really help, like you said, guide the conversation moving forward.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, so I guess that's my input. I think it would be something worth pursuing, and could help both of our boards, for a long time in the future.
Great, thanks, Steve. And Rhea.
So I wasn't at the last meeting. I guess I I feel like I defer to other people that know more about how this can help us in the future. I mean, it's not a ton of money, but it is a chunk of change. And is the money coming from the TIF funding or the operating budget? Does it make sense to take these commercial taxpayer dollars that our businesses are paying? Is that going to make us a more effective board? I mean, how do we sell it to our constituents? And I just don't know. So I mean, I sort of defer to you all on if you think it's necessary for us to have a more productive board, then I'm all for it.
Yeah, Andrew, just gonna jump in here. So what I believe I'm reading is that we have an estimate from the town attorney.
It's our attorney. It's the DDA's attorney, Paul Benedetti. I just want to make sure.
I'm sorry, our attorney. Okay, estimate from
This is his
our attorney. Okay, our attorney, that he can basically draft a working agreement around, I'm reading this, verbatim, several areas of needed clarification that have been accepted in other communities for the NDDA and the Board of Trustees to review. I'd like to, I guess, see, what some of those are. Not to say that it is not a good idea. And then, a working session can then be convened to final draft. So am I reading this as in, we're going to pay an attorney to tell us how to have discussions with the Board of Trustees?
So no, what the working agreement would do is it would clarify issues around banking accounts, things like that. And then by him drafting the working agreement beforehand, it lets it would let the DDA and the Board of Trustees both review everything, tweak some things, ask questions, and so that then when you go into the working session, you could be most productive. So if there's some things you want to finalize or some, that yes, it would sort of guide that conversation, but it would help us get to a very productive working session. And that's what appealed to me about it, because some people would have a work session first and then try to do a working agreement. And what I liked about our discussion with Mr. Benedetti was that his thought was to do the working agreement first, so that then a lot of that could be hashed out, so that when everybody comes to the table, it would be the most efficient use of everyone's time. Is that helpful?
Well, I think that's a noble thought. I don't know if necessarily, and no offense to Mr. Benedetti, if paying him upfront to, kind of come set the boundaries would make anything get done faster, quicker, more efficient. I guess I'd love to see like maybe an example, or back here in 2014 when this happened, if this had been in place. That would be my question: is how does the draft working agreement going to benefit both the DDA and the Board of Trustees in making decisions more efficiently? The question mark.
If I can just say something real quick, Andrew, I think because we just went through this entire Board of Trustees back and forth for, 9 months on money being transferred, that there were questions about if we could get back the time we just spent on those 9 months of meetings back and forth with the DDA and the BOT, and all of the involvement, and there was so much going on with the DDA at the time. This would set a standard moving forward so that we had some kind of idea how things should go between the DDA and the Board of Trustees and what our expectations should be. When I'm off the DDA, when all the Board of Trustees have rotated through, there would still be this, so we're not going back to the drawing board every time an office position changes, someone different is elected or selected to be on a board. So for me, it goes back to the reason we went to him in the first place and said, gosh, we need to discuss this. And we kept having to go back to it. And it took us a long time to sort it out. So that's the reason that I think it would be great to have this agreement in place with the Board of Trustees now, so that 5 years from now, whoever's on the board is not going back to this exact same step.
So this is then strictly about financial interworkings. Is that correct?
No, this is Steve Carreau. It's not strictly about financial. It's, that would be probably one of the more important aspects that the DDA and the BOT have struggled over between us. And I wanted to mention, Andrew, also that Paul Benedetti's very, very involved with DDAs and, is the Colorado statute that forms DDAs. I don't know that he wrote any part of it, but he was involved in the whole creation of the statute for DDAs. So he's a very, well-versed person in terms of, and I think what this is mainly dealing with is just the perennial struggles between town administration, in our case, it's the Board of Trustees, and the DDAs. And he represents other DDAs around the state as well. So he's in a very good position to, to understand the struggles that come up between the two groups, and also to know the statutes and the laws that govern those. And so, like Barbara said, I think that's one great example of some other things that have come up during my tenure as the chair, which I believe from talking to Paul Benedetti, which, by the way, when we reach out to him, on topic by topic, adds up as well. So as Barbara said, if, 2 years from now, the next chair is coming back with the same exact question that we've already hashed out, that's going to cost us, $700 with Paul Benedetti, as opposed to having this in place that we can point to and both boards know it exists. And we can say, look, you really don't have any say in this matter. This is a DDA is a public entity, and we have these rights under the Colorado statutes, and you don't have a say in this.
That makes it more clear. I think working agreement threw it off for me as opposed to like operating agreement.
Okay. Yeah.
But that may have just been semantics, but that makes more sense, and I understand and can see the value in that. So thank you for clarifying.
Sure.
Great, thank you. And Steve Rowntree.
Yeah, I mean, I think an effective working relationship between the board trustees and the NDDA is important. I think the challenging thing here, in my mind, it seems like from the last couple of meetings, there's some history, and so maybe the challenging thing, and I think Andrew brought this up a bit, is I appreciate the trying to document a way to move forward and work well together. If that requires the investment up front and then a working session happens, and there has to be, I think, that desire from all parties at the table to make things move forward in that direction. Otherwise, the money spent on a document that isn't going to do anything would be the concern. But I think I think the end result, if all parties are looking at a positive end result and working together well, then yes, it's a great place to start. So I don't know if that makes sense. I think it's great if everybody's on board with a positive working relationship.
Barb, it's Miranda, and I just wanted to comment, Steve, I think I do believe that the Board of Trustees does have a desire to improve this relationship. And one benefit of doing this is having something in place before a new board is set. Because I think one of the challenges the DDA has struggled with is you have new members who maybe don't understand the structure of the DDA, and you're starting over every 2 years with a new group. Whereas if there was an agreement that the board, new trustees could read and familiarize themselves with the expectations of both parties, that might help to expedite decisions made and things the DDA brings forward after a new board is set.
Yeah, thank you for the additional input.
Yeah, thanks, Miranda. Jonathan.
Sorry, I was struggling to unmute. I guess I'm hearing all of that is said and finding agreements on kind of all sides of the line. I guess I would fall with what Duart said in terms of it may be semantics, but it should not be called a working agreement. It should be called an operational agreement. The Board of Trustees and Town of Nederland boards already have in place the Town of Nederland working agreements, which, whether or not they exist, I'll own it that sometimes I fail to follow. So I feel like that amount of money spent on a working agreement just to memorialize the hope to work together may not be worth the money, whereas an operational agreement that really memorializes this is how it works that can then be incorporated into incoming BOT members' board packets and orientation. Whether or not they actually pay attention to that is another issue. Would be far more worth the money. And then it would be highlighted in a document that the DDA paid for and the BOT, approved of, that at any point in the future, the executive director of the DDA or the chair had an issue, all they would have to do is cite the ordinance and send it right back and say, as you said, Steve, none of your business. Here's what it is. And that cuts it off right there. In terms of working session, I think it would be nice to have a working session with the BOT. BOT has been struggling to have working sessions with many of its advisory boards, as well as the DDA is not an advisory board, which I think is the whole purpose of this. Is the DDA is beyond the BOT, one of the more functional boards in this town that has a lot more bandwidth to operate on its own and operates under oversight of the BOT, but has a lot of its own rights and ability to take on projects that are not necessarily under the prerogative or purview of the BOT. And I think the conflict that folks are speaking to is sometimes that certain BOT members would like to have a little bit more oversight of that. And it's really dialing in on a legal statute basis what the BOT really has oversight over versus what is strictly in the wheelhouse of the DDA and does not need to be approved or discussed by the BOT. So I'm all in favor of drafting this so long as it's not in a working agreement terminology, but in an operational, operational standards that really outlines what the DDA can and can't do and basically just cuts it off at the head. If the BOT wants to step in, then they have to show up and provide comment as a member of the public, not as a BOT member. So that, I guess, is my perspective. In terms of the rates, 3,000 to 5,000, I think is a piddly chunk of change right now for the DDA. If it is really going to help provide some continuity of government and provide a clear path forward for both the BOT and the DDA. My last comment would be that in terms of cost sharing, the town's lawyer is going to look over this agreement regardless. So I don't think it would be appropriate for the DDA to ask the town to share the cost of this, because the town is going to take its own cost by having its own town attorney look over this. So if this is something the DDA wants to do, the DDA would then need to put the funds up to do it, and the BOT would then be paying the town attorney to look over it on the BOT sides of thing. And this is really, I think, only beneficial if we're outlining based upon state statute and legal parameters of who has jurisdiction over what, and kind of clearing up some of those ambiguities that exist across the whole state with DDAs and town administrations.
Jonathan, I think that was very well put, because that's also my feeling, is that it would be based on the laws and the statutes. And Paul Benedetti has told us a number of times that there are vague parts and there are contradictory parts to the state statute. And those are things that, would be kind of really great between the BOT and the DDA to hash out, where it's not entirely clear by the statutes. But by and large, I see this as just clarifying, what our rights and all are for each board based on laws and statutes and bylaws. So thanks for adding that clarity.
Absolutely. And personally, I'm all actually in favor of this, and I would not care if it costs 10,000, because I think it's a fundamental need for the DDA and the BOT to form a better functional relationship. And I think a lot of it is that we're largely volunteer boards, whether you're on the DDA or the BOT. We get $150 a month as a stipend. So we get a little bit of here, but in reality, I spend about 10 to 12 hours a week on this on top of my full-time job. You're all business owners. You spend this meeting and your time talking with other business owners, working on these committees. None of us really get paid to do what we do. And as a result, we need to seek out expert advice and have these clear, concrete, really legal documents that direct what we do, and that we can just cut the long-winded discussions out of the picture and opinions out of the picture and just say, this is how it works, and please send me an email with your comments and opinions. So I appreciate you guys bringing this forward.
Thanks. And if I could add one more thing is, I see this, if we come to a good agreement between the two boards, I see it as a great way to enhance the cooperation of the boards and minimize the friction between the boards, because so much of the friction comes from one board or the other feeling like they're not being treated fairly, or they're, not being respected in some way. And I think that kind of is an undertone between the boards when we get together on issues. So I see this as really helping our relationship as well, by just clarifying what our different, priorities are and abilities under the laws.
Yeah, and I think if we also had a quarterly dodgeball, tournaments, that would bring a little levity to that there. But all right, I'll be quiet.
I like that idea. DDA should sponsor it.
Great, thank you, Jonathan and Steve. And Ron Mitchell.
I'm here. The vaguer any law is, the more conflict it generates, and that ends up usually in lawsuits at some point. There are a handful of lawsuits that DDAs and BOTs have been involved in, and I would imagine that Paul Benedetti would take the fruits of those lawsuits and incorporate them into this. My personal view is this is an incredibly cheap way to get some very, very valuable information and guidance, because were we to be like some other DDAs and BOTs that have gotten involved in lawsuits, the cost is astronomically higher than $10,000 to get a guiding document like this. So I'm very much in favor of the idea because there are vagaries, and if we can agree on eliminating those, basically what we would be doing is amending the law for our two boards, because as a statutory town, lawsuits that have occurred don't create precedents for the rest of the DDAs, because we are not in the category where the lawsuit results would do that. So having Paul, who's been involved so long and so much and knows so much about it, to me, this is probably a real bargain. And I think the board should pass it. I don't care where we get the funds. I agree that the BOT should not fund it or be a part of the funding, because this will end up also being a negotiating process. And some of the things that will be interpreted for the benefit of the DDA would probably be very much against some of the current BOT members' philosophical camps. So I see this as being a fairly lengthy process, but I also think it could be a very productive one, and I'm very much in favor of it. So I encourage you to consider it and appropriate the funds.
Great, thank you, Ron. And Danielle, do you have any input?
I agree with what people have been saying already. I don't have much input myself other than appreciating the knowledge you guys are all bringing to the table. I think it's wonderful that Paul is available, that we should utilize his expertise and be able to pay for it as the NDDA, because the BOT will be doing their part to develop it. I think it's good that we do the draft first. I like changing it to the operating agreement rather than working agreement. That sounds smart. I think doing the draft first and then having a working session would be good, because then we don't waste time trying to pick out more arguments. I think Paul understands where we're coming from and can write that up efficiently, and I'm all for it. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Danielle. So let's see. Kate or Miranda, then that brings the question, should we have a not a four to share that will work with the town and get a meeting set and ask for a work session?
Yeah, it's Miranda. That was my recommendation, is that if it sounds like the board is in agreement, but that I'll work with Barb and Kate and Mayor Larson to find a meeting date and time, maybe a couple proposals to send out to connect with the board for that working agreement. I think the question though is to Kate, if the desire is to come to the meeting prepared with a draft document, or if that meeting will serve as kind of the discussion point for what the document will then be built off of.
Do we want to go in, do we want to pay Paul Benedetti to create that draft document ahead of time, or do we ask the BOT first?
My recommendation, oh, sorry, go ahead, Andrew.
Well, I don't want to put my foot in my mouth, Miranda, but you know, if it was make a resolution to authorize Mr. Benedetti to create a operating agreement as he sees fit to provide clarification for the DDA and the BOT to outline the rules and regulations of working together. That was my best attempt there. So sorry if that was a kind of stumbly, but trying to put forth a resolution there that I support. I support it. I support calling it an operating agreement, and if someone is able to articulate that better than I did, please go for it.
So this isn't an action item. So if you want to move it to an action item, so you have a formal vote, you would want to do that first. Otherwise, we could give that not a 4 to continue to work on this. I guess I
jump in here, Miranda.
Yeah, please.
I guess I was going to say the same thing, that as a discussion item, it seems like we have an agreement. So that what we can do, and I'll be happy to make this motion when I'm done, is motion to make this an action item, and then we can take a formal vote, thereby finding the funds. I would suggest this coming out of the operational budget. Otherwise, you're going to have to wait till the TIF funds are approved by the BOT. And the best thing, if you want a work session with the BOT, is we have a lot of different things that we're juggling and a lot of requests for work sessions, from ProSab to deal with parks, to SAB to deal with sustainability, zero waste initiatives, to the DDA here currently, as well as to sit down with the Planning Commission, which controls CBD zoning issues that also affect the businesses in town. So if we want to have an effective work session with the BOT, we're going to come with a document already there that is sent to the BOT at least a week in advance, so the members of the BOT have a chance to take that document, read it thoroughly, and redline any parts of it that they actually want to bring up in a discussion. Otherwise, what you're basically showing up for is time in a discussion to discuss an idea that you have no plan around. So it sounds like the whole idea from the chair and the executive director I'm hearing is we would like to have an agreement, and we would like to discuss this agreement with the BOT and get their feedback on it. So to ask for a work session when you don't yet actually have anything to functionally work on doesn't seem to make sense. And so as a DDA, I'm in favor, and I would motion that we move this discussion item to an action item.
Yeah, and just before we did that, I just wanted to add that because we were just, before all this, we were just discussing whether we would come with the document or not. And Jonathan addressed that just there. And I just wanted to second that. I think it's much more productive to have a document in hand and definitely get it to the BOT at least a week ahead of the plan. But I also feel like in order to make the costing work out better, we can let Paul Benedetti know, that we kind of want a draft document. We're not looking for a finished document going into a discussion. So, he doesn't have to spend all his time like perfecting this document, but it'll address the main points in a reasonable way. And then we'll hash it out with the BOT, and, they'll redline it and all that. And that's when it could go back to, Paul for refinement and finalization.
Correct.
Either, in partnership with the town lawyer as well.
That's a great point.
So I just wanted to clarify that
point. If it's expensive enough, we could then ask for TIF funds from the BOT, and it could be justified under TIF funds because you're providing continuity of government for a partnership between a local downtown development board and its town administration. So I motion we move this discussion item to an action item so we can take a formal vote.
Second.
Kate, can you take the roll?
All right. Steve Carreau,
yes.
Ray Ortner,
Yes.
Barb Hart,
Yes.
Andrew Dwart,
Yes.
Ron Mitchell,
Yes.
Danielle Kraus,
Yes.
Steve Rowntree,
Yes.
Jonathan Baumhover.
Yes.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. So what is our next step from there? Kate?
So here's what I heard, and you all tell me if I'm wrong. I heard I will follow up with Paul Benedetti and get him to get this draft started. The working draft started, and I'll send it around to everyone when we have it, and then we'll provide it in advance notice for the Board of Trustees. And we'll also be working with Miranda to set a meeting and get the timing of everything. When I first spoke with Paul, he seemed to think he could do this pretty quickly, which is reflected again in the cost. So I'll look into that tomorrow and see how fast it can get going, and I'll work with Miranda and Barb to get the working session started.
Great. And the next time we could even bring this to the BOT is not until November 9th because of the next meeting being full and election day and all that stuff. So I think that gives us a pretty good amount of time to make it to the next step.
Well, correct me if I'm wrong, Miranda, but it'll most likely be more like December. We're really looking at just in terms of workload, budget sessions, and maybe Miranda, you have a better grasp, but we're pretty busy right now on the BOT. So I think it's a DDA. I guess my suggestion would be to work with Paul Benedetti as the DDA staff and the chair, send this to the DDA for about a week, let us look over it, have another discussion, let us redline it as the DDA, and during that time be looking for an opening in the BOT schedule for a work session between 6 and 7 during the BOT time. And by that time, this DDA will have had time to really look at it itself, redline anything that we have questions on, have our own discussion, and then when it goes before the BOT, all of the questions that they will likely ask will have great thoughtful answers. And it gives the DDA some time and Paul some time in his schedule to really give us a strong working document. You know, if we're really meaningful about wanting this to be a partnership with the BOT, then you have to look at it as a living document when it goes to the BOT. And what we need from Paul is where are the clear legal lines. And I believe that current DDA staff and leadership has more than enough information to know where the vagaries are based upon the past relationship. And I think Steve has spoken very clearly about the history that we can identify as those vagaries from. So.
Great. Thank you, Jonathan. So bring this back. If Paul has the ability to turn it around in that amount of time, bring this back to the November 10th DDA meeting.
That would be my suggestion, and hopefully he's had some time, a couple of days to get it to all of us. So when we're looking at it at that meeting, we've read it, and we can speak to it and see if we're all in agreement, and then we send it to the BOT. But asking to send it to the BOT before looking over the final draft yourself and having some time to discuss it as an action item, as a formal request to the BOT. Right now, what I heard we voted on was to allow budget funds to be spent to have the DDA lawyer draft an operational agreement with the Netherland BOT and town staff. So,
And we haven't had a vote on that. We just moved it to an action item.
yes,
So I don't know if we need to vote on that.
I would agree. Actually, with proper process, we should then all agree that's what we're directing Kate and Barb as the chair to do with this committee, is to work with Paul Benedetti to identify these vagaries, draft us a working document we'll discuss next meeting, and then during that time be working with Miranda, town staff, to identify an open night for that work session to discuss it. And ideally then out of that work session, you'll know if it could be a action item that night for the BOT, or then a discussion item and then an action item. So correct me if anything's wrong, Miranda.
Oh, that's all good. We agreed.
So we need a motion to spend the funding?
I make a motion to, oh, am I talking over someone?
There's a weird echo there.
Okay, I'll mute and let someone else make the motion.
Andrew, you can go. I had to mute Ron. I had to mute you because the feedback was coming there. You could go, Andrew.
I make a motion to authorize Paul Benedetti to create a operating agreement between the DDA and the BOT for review at our next DDA meeting.
I second that
Would
motion.
would you take a friendly amendment and call it a draft as
Yeah.
opposed to?
Okay. Yes. So I make a motion to authorize Paul Benedetti, and I guess this, should we just say authorize Paul Benedetti to spend no more than $5,000 to create a draft operating agreement between the DDA and the BOT at the next for review at the next meeting.
I second that motion.
Kate, can you call the roll? Is that worded correctly, Miranda? Is that what we need?
Yeah, I think that's fine.
Discussion?
Any discussion?
Yes. What was Paul Benedetti's estimate, Kate? Was
It
it
was
5,000 or 10,000?
No, it was between 3 and 5,000.
Between 3 and 5.
Yes.
Okay. Andrew, why don't you say up to 5,000 as opposed to a flat?
He said no more than 5.
No more than
It said
5,000.
not to exceed 5 is what I have.
That's fine.
All right, I'm going to call the vote. Steve Carreau,
Yes.
Rhea Ortner,
Yes.
Barb Hart,
Yes.
Andrew Dwart,
Yes, if you heard that, I might double click there.
Ron Mitchell,
Yes.
Danielle Krause,
Yes.
Steve Rowntree,
Yes.
Jonathan Baumhover.
Yes.
All right, thank you.
Great. Motion passes. That leaves us with the last discussion item of the evening, and that is the signature authority also being presented by Kate.
So this evening, I'm bringing before you, as the financial transition has continued to move forward, the need for signature authority has become more clear to me. And it would improve efficiency if a policy was drafted and approved that provided the executive director with signature authority up to $10,000. This is similar to the Town of Nederland policy as well as other small nonprofits. Approvals from 2 authorized signers would still be needed and documented. However, this would enable the executive director to be the only signature once a check was approved and cut. This would allow for faster invoice remittance. My question for you all tonight is does the board approve of moving forward with the financial policy providing signature authority to the executive director for up to $10,000? I'm happy to answer any questions or anything you may have around this.
I think this is just fine. It streamlines our operations. Let's do it.
I just have a couple of comments.
Sure.
The need came out of multiple things happening at once. And one is that it took almost 4 months to get the signature cards completed because our bank was closed and other things were happening. But now that we have the signature cards completed or almost completed, there should be 4 signers on the account. Part of that was also Hope didn't sign off on the account, so we were waiting and waiting and waiting. But once the signature cards are completed, I think that with 4 signers, we are okay to streamline the process and make sure that the checks are being signed in a timely fashion. And we're just waiting for a couple of signatures that have not been done at citywide, to my understanding. So that's my main input, is that it's been a couple of very difficult months, but I think we're there.
The only thing that's needed is that everyone has to go into citywide and sign one more document in person with their personnel as a witness. I've done it. I don't know who else has, but you can go to our local branch, ask for the document, they'll give it to you. Once all 4 of us have signed on it, we're good to go.
And I have signed that as well. And today, and I went to the drive up and said, I need to sign that document. And she said, great, come inside. But she also did say that you can even come to the window with your ID in hand, and they'll do it through the drive up. So it's really just waiting on those last signatures, and citywide is good to go.
Okay, great.
I just had a question about this. Oh, this is
We're
Steve
waiting on
Carell.
Andrew and Kate then to sign.
Correct.
Excuse me? Yeah, I didn't know I needed to go in person. I will go tomorrow and do that.
And me, you're waiting on me to go in person?
Yes.
Okay, all right, that's all. Make it, I will be there tomorrow.
Thank you.
And Ron, do I need to sign off on my signature ability?
No, you don't. The banks both agreed that if we did it in this manner, all other signers, prior signers, were eliminated.
Okay, great.
And this was because I couldn't get a response from Hope for 3 months.
Right. Sure. I had a question about this topic, though. I didn't quite understand what this is. Is it saying just that the executive director could sign for checks up to $10,000 without a secondary signer?
So I would bring back a policy for you. Sorry, I can hear feedback. So this would just, so I was just floating this to you so that we could all talk about it and why that this has come up. And so then next month I would bring this as an action item and actually give you the policy, and you all would vote on it and approve it. I just wanted to see if there was a desire that if you all would feel comfortable with moving in this direction as we're evolving as an organization together. So that's why my question for you is, are you comfortable with moving forward with the financial policy and bringing that to you? But yes, it would basically saying that the executive director could, signature alone could work for up to $10,000. But it would still have the exact same process that we've had, that there would always be 2 people signing off on that check getting cut. But then when I do cut the check, I could sign it and have the check and balance there that we need.
And so essentially it would change the 2 signers to one physical signer, but another person or 2 other people would have to.
Yeah, honestly, I wasn't going to change anything about the 2 signers. It's just empowering the executive director to be able to have one signature, but I wasn't proposing to change anything about having 2 anything about 2 signers. Does that make sense?
No, I don't understand that.
It would mean approval of 2 of the treasurer and the chair for any check, no matter what size. But Kate could just write it out, sign it, and send it. And then anything over $10,000, 2 of us would have to sign that check.
So let me jump in here. Would that approval be a phone call then backed by an email through official DDA public trackable record, but it would just allow Kate in the moment to use cell phones and email communication to rectify the inability of volunteers to get to the same place on the same day to overcome the problems and complications, I guess, that have arisen in the
We're
last
doing the approvals by email right now.
Yeah.
It's just the logistics having one person sign it, put in a box, or somebody else run up 24 flights of 24 steps on a flight of stairs, grab it out of the box, run it around town, get it signed. It's awkward. Its accomplishments are not needed. This is a
So I guess what I'm saying, as long as those approvals come through email,
Yes,
then you're still addressing the public record. And you're still
exactly. It's
addressing the intent of the requirement of the two, but it's to allow you as the executive director, the paid staff,
Mhm.
to pay out on a timely basis your contracts without having to run down other business owners in town during their daily schedule to get a second signature. It's not that you don't have the money, it's that people have lives.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. It's right now there's 3 people that are involved in that process, and and I mean physically involved in running around, where this would make it where there would be only one person physically doing things, but still 3 people involved.
I would say,
And
considering we're running town virtually currently, I'm all in favor of this.
Okay.
yeah, I would, excuse me, I would just, like, I guess to have what constitutes in writing a formal approval. Um, is that language exists somewhere in our code that we can reference, and just so that we're all on the same page and being as transparent as possible.
There's nothing in the statute that regulates how the banking operations are done. We're plenty transparent doing it this way.
I was just trying to rectify how how it works within the town code and how it does sound, like you're giving the ability to one person when it says in the DDA, it's 2, it's the intent, and those are the agreements. So if that's discussed and we now understand how that approval process is happening and it is trackable by public record, then you can address what is inevitably going to be a question of the BOT before, and you're addressing that as a board right now, which allows the whole board to understand what are we actually discussing here.
I wonder if something as simple as and just a Gmail handle, accounting at NDDA, approval, where this is
We have
going
that.
to we have that. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, so if that, that email handle is circulated among the members who, concur, and then that's it. And then Kate, you can be the one that gets to sign the check and not have to run around. That makes perfect sense, and makes life easier.
I move that we allow Kate to present us with a policy at the next meeting with regard to this subject of extended approval within her authority.
Well, it's
Just a
currently a
reminder, this
discussion
is,
item, so we could
yeah.
just give them out of 4 at this rate, and Kate will bring us back the policy that states this, and we'll vote on it next meeting, is what Kate brought before us tonight.
Thank you.
So do we need a roll call for a not a 4, or do we do all in favor on that particular one?
I think all in favor is fine, but yeah.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed?
Aye.
Ray, was that an aye as opposed? Yours.
I'm in agreement.
Okay, thank you. It echoed in afterwards, so I wanted to make sure. Thank you. With that,
So it wasn't opposing? Sorry, because the echoing is so
Correct.
bad, I'm having trouble hearing. So was Rhea in favor or opposed?
in favor.
Thank you.
Great. That is the last of the regular items on the agenda this evening. Is there any other business? Hearing none, can I get a motion for adjournment?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Good night, everyone.
Good night,
All right.
everyone. Thank
Thank
you.
you. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks. Good to see
Yeah.
you.
Bonsoir.